Hey guys, Santino Marella here, and you are listening to the brand new podcast, Broad Shoulders.
For the sake of the story that stays untold. Broad shoulders, crowded from the light.
Hey folks, what's going on? This is Ethan. You are listening to Broad Shoulders, the podcast where we talk to people who carry more than their own weight as entertainers. On the pod today, for our inaugural episode, we are joined by someone who is widely considered to be the greatest comedic professional wrestler of our time. His work in the professional wrestling space represents the gold standard for incorporating comedy in sports entertainment. I am talking about none other than Santino Marella. We had a great conversation. We talk about a lot of things from his career to his own personal life and much more. So, without further ado, here he is, Santino Marella. Santino, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me.
Thank you very much, and it's pretty cool that it's your inaugural episode.
Yes, yeah. Well, I wanted to start off with a bang, and you're very talented, so I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, buddy.
Yes. So, just to start out too, so the show is called Broad Shoulders, and so when you think broad shoulders, you think, big, brawny, muscly, type of guys. Obviously, wrestlers fits the bill. But also it has a double meaning. It's like you're really carrying your own weight in life. Especially when we're given sort of different roles at companies in the workspace. You really have to be able to perform at a certain level. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind. And the people that can do that exceptionally well, people that can perform above their expectations, beyond whatever is expected of them, I'm just fascinated, in terms of their stories and, how they got to where they are. And also just, their process, their creative process, and what went into their own success. And, obviously you've been exceptional in that regard. But I think when it comes to just, wrestling in the WWE, having this idea that, you were going to be a Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit type, that you were going to be one of these, muscly but like serious type of characters. And you learn quick that, when you came to the WWE, your character, your role, it wouldn't exactly be that, to put it lightly. You'd have a totally different character. But obviously you made that your shtick. So what was it like also too? I mean, I think so many people in their careers have an idea of what their career is going to be, maybe before even it gets started. But then once their career's going, they sort of work to their strong suits, and they're able to do what they do best. So what was it like for you, sort of that entire process, and just sort of coming to terms with, hey, this is what I thought the experience would be like initially, but hey, this is actually how it's going, and it's going pretty well.
Yeah, it was interesting. My first wrestling match, I didn't have a name or a persona or anything. So there's this funny story where when my dad first met my mom, he gave her this fake name. It was Johnny Giobasco. So I just thought it was hilarious. So my first, I was Johnny Giobasco in the Indies in Ontario, and my first several matches, excuse me, were Johnny Giobasco. Even when I went to Japan, I was Johnny Giobasco, but it wasn't, looking back now, it wasn't a character. It was just a name, just a
Sure.
guy. And when I got to OVW, I think my first match was still Johnny Giobasco. And then Rip Rogers just called me Boris. He gave me the
Yeah.
nickname. One day he said, "Hey, you, Boris, get in the ring." And so one of the other, classmates that was there who has, more experience with Rip, he said, "Oh, that's going to be your nickname from now on. Whenever he calls you something, it sticks." And I'm like, "Boris, oh man, I'm Boris." And
Not the sexiest of names for
yeah, and
a
all of a sudden
superstar.
it was, I don't know, 2 3 weeks in, I'm like, I'm Boris. Everyone's calling me Boris.
Yeah.
And so my first coach was Don Koloff. So I
Mm.
thought, man, I don't think there's been a combination of Boris Koloff. So instead of fighting it, to kind of go with it and to use it, because of my judo background, because of I came from battle arts in Japan. I thought, if I'm Boris Koloff, I could be this Russian special forces trained military fighter and come across as like the Sambo guy. and that was so that so I went with the flow, so to speak, at that point. And but then I realized, man, now I could. There's much more of a character here. I can sink my teeth into something. I know about him. I can imagine his upbringing. I can picture his life story, how we got to this moment. Right? And it was very helpful. And I was Boris. That's it. I was Boris for gosh, about almost 2 years. And then right when I got the call, like for example, when I got the call, Mike Bucci was on the phone. And he goes, "Hey Boris, can I ask you a question?" And then and he pitched this potential character named Santino. Well, I didn't know the name. It was an Italian guy who might come out of the crowd in Italy. Vince's idea. And I remember thinking and asking actually, like, what's going to happen to Boris? And he's like, "Forget Boris, man. This is Vince's idea." And felt a
Yeah.
little guilty for just turning my back on the character that got me signed and got me this far. But that was it. Then it became Santino. And I found out the day of I was a guy named Santino, and you know, that's it. It changed on a dime, and I became Santino. But then after about a month or so, maybe a couple of months, then Santino turned bad.
Yeah.
The crowd wasn't really. The crowd doesn't like to be told who to like, and they
Yeah.
were kind of being force fed this new guy that came out of the audience, and you're
Absolutely.
supposed to cheer for him now, and it was funny. They were kind of rejecting it a bit. So then when I turned bad, the character just came to life to the next level. I knew much more about him. I came up with the story. I knew his parents, his upbringing, where he's from, the town he's from, what
Yeah.
he did, and I did a podcast with Chris Jericho years ago, over 10 years ago.
Oh well. Yeah.
It was like the prequel to the moment where I debuted, where I just knew the whole backstory and how it got to that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's how intimately I knew the character. And now that I'm a coach, I have guys, and maybe they're training for like 2 weeks, and they want to tell me about their character, and I'm like, man, don't get married to that character. And I had a student in the past. He had this tortured artist soul character, like a
Yeah.
rave.
Yeah.
And it's just not a good character because one, you're a tweener. Nobody hates someone who's suffering mentally, and nobody wants to be like that guy, right? So when
Very true.
when you have a character and you project it to the audience, you want one of two things: you want people to say, "Man, I want to be like that," or "Man, I hate that guy,"
Yes.
And that and Raven was kind of like that. Like, was he bad guy, good guy? People liked him, but he was kind of bad.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So that you want to have a definitive yay or boo.
It's actually funny that you mentioned that because I think I'd seen you speak somewhere about, Hunter, Triple H had a conversation with you about how, especially if you're going to be the type of character that you ended up being, this funny guy, but also just like a comedian, if you want to be somebody who's cracking jokes throughout the duration of, any sort of promotion, being part of the promotion WWE, it's like there's two angles. There's a good guy and a bad guy. And if you're the bad guy, people are going to laugh at you. If you're the good guy, they're laughing with you. And so what was it like sort of navigating that and sort of just seeing how the fans turned once you did obviously, become a babyface?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I was a heel for probably longer than people remember, and the joke was always on me. So that's easy because if you work with somebody and the joke's going to be on you, it's because a lot of guys, they don't want to look stupid, right? And if you're a bad guy working with a comedic babyface, the yoke's going to be on you. So,
Yeah.
but it was a clear indication that the audience was the one making the change and the transition. So once I learned that, and it was one of those gems he gave me that I teach, I pass forward.
Yeah.
He just said that, when you're a bad guy, the joke's on you, and you're a good guy, the joke's on them, and you have to adjust the comedy now that you're a good guy so that the joke's on them, and
Mhm.
it's one of those attributes. Like I said, if the joke's constantly on me, that little kid in the audience doesn't want to grow up and be like me.
That's right.
no little kid's gonna want to grow up and be the butt of the jokes.
Of
But if
course.
he's the guy that can outsmart the bad guy and make them look foolish,
Yes.
that's admirable, right?
Absolutely. Well, no, and it's funny too because, um, again, I think I'd seen somewhere, you sort of even like in advice, in your own advice to your daughter, who obviously is a WWE superstar in her own right now, like, when she was younger, you were basically saying, hey, you can be funny, you can be a goofball, and obviously she has an entirely different character from you. But just when she was being brought up, you were saying, there's one thing to be that funny, goofball, court jester type of character, but you also have to be a competitor. And that balance is really, really important. So could you speak to that at all in terms of just your mentality, going into this, and just, you obviously have a lot of prowess as a professional wrestler. You wouldn't have been there if you didn't. Just making it, yeah, exactly, yeah, so that people obviously knew, hey, I'm here and I belong to be here.
Yeah, it's funny. So I would purposely show moments of brilliance with regards to wrestling. Pull off a nice clean technique, and then do something, to give up control, so to speak, or give it back to them. But every time you gave them these little snapshots of being capable, it was just enough to believe and have hope and believe that there could be a miracle. And if he strings enough of these snapshots together, there's a real opportunity and chance for him to be victorious. Yeah, but you have to definitely remind them that you are capable, or otherwise it's a joke in the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think another big thing too, just you yourself, just obviously your daughter, like I mentioned, Ariana Grace, she's a WWE superstar. That's like a huge deal. What was it like as a dad, but then also just like as a fan of, your own story, Santino's story, to be able to wrestle with her too for TNA? What was that like?
Oh yeah, that was cool. I was just talking about that yesterday to somebody actually. It's cool because it was history making,
Yeah.
and I didn't think it would happen so quickly, but it was nice. But the beautiful thing was that it was actually in Canada. TNA had a show in Brampton, Ontario, which is like hour hour and a half away from us. So my parents were able to come down and watch it, and
Yeah.
I had Bianca so young that I moved back with my parents, and we had like shared custody. So Bianca also grew up with my parents.
Mm.
In Mississauga, right? Or
Mississauga, yeah,
okay,
yeah. I
cool.
was a kid, so I lived there, and so it was a really, when you have a kid so young in the middle of university, everyone's worried, like, oh my God. And then, that kid and the kid that he had, for both of them to have success, it defies the odds a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually, it's a really interesting angle, and in terms of, people talk about like nepotism and like, I'd say self-admittedly, I've been guilty in the past of sort of complaining, oh, saying, this is how things are, especially in the entertainment industry, and because I do think in some, degree it can be an issue for some people, or they view it as such. But I think again, I heard you mention something about, nepotism with regard to WWE with you and your daughter, and how in her first, it wasn't a done deal. Her first tryout, she didn't get in, and she had to work harder than everybody else in the room to get a spot. So that, come time when she had her second tryout, she knocked it out of the park and she was there. So what do you also, I mean, just your opinions, your genuine opinion, because you yourself, obviously, you don't have anybody, in the WWE. You did this all by yourself. But understanding also from your daughter's perspective, like it's almost as if she had to work harder than she might have otherwise had to work because the expectations were so high, because she had more pressure on her, being that, you're her father. So just talk about, yeah, what sort of your daughter's mindset and sort of what changed in between that first tryout and that second tryout for her.
Yeah, the biggest thing is that, so every second or third generation superstar, the worst thing you could possibly say to them is that they're only here because of their family,
Yeah.
whether it's your mother or your father. So, the parents know that. So the parents prepare them, and say, listen, you have to work twice as hard as everybody. to take away their ability to say that. And
Right.
so, of course, they have to live up to expectations, but a lot of it, I think, is just to take away people's ability to say that you're only here. And if you look at the second generation wrestlers that are coming up, Regal's son, Fit Finley's kids, like they're all awesome. They're all really
Absolutely.
good.
Cody Rhodes, Charlotte, yeah, like all these
Cody,
folks. Yeah.
Charlotte, everyone's good.
Yeah.
All the Rotundos. So one, they were also exposed to it from very young, sometimes by osmosis, just being around the business. You pick up things that you weren't even paying attention to just because you've been around it as a kid, or you know the lifestyle that it requires, or the best way to teach your kids something is show them, right? And my dad's home, my dad's working out, my dad's doing this, my dad's on the road, my dad's home, my dad spends time with us, and he trains, and you're teaching them how to be someone that's on the road and have a family and the work ethic. And that's why I train, and that's why I do jujitsu, to show my kids this is what we do, man. We go to school, we go to work, we come home, we train, we lift, and we're a family of athletes, and it has to become a part of your identity. So a lot of the pro wrestlers that they were able to watch, and also it's not just like it's high level professional wrestlers like Ric Flair, like the greatest. Fit Finley's incredible. Regal was really good, So the Mike Rotundo, excellent professional wrestlers. And I don't know if it's just think about it. The kids of those guys, that was what they had to as a reference point. Someone who was really good, and generally, if someone's really good, it's because they worked really hard. Not everyone was a natural. You had to work really hard. So if you can develop the skill of working really hard, then odds are you're going to be pretty good.
So I think also too, I'm just a huge fan of wrestling. So seeing you now, I will say it's pretty surreal. I've been watching you ever since I was a little kid. So now to be able to meet you is very strange and cool, and everything good. I will say I was watching live when you pulled out the Cobra, and you were right across from Mick Foley with his with Sacco. I just want to know sort of what the conversation was like, because you went up to him, you approached him with the idea, right, for that?
Yeah, we were gonna have a moment. That was already predetermined. We were gonna have a moment, but it's kind of up to us to create the moment and how it's going to look. And
absolutely,
I just thought of that whole backing into another and turning and being on edge, and like a whole cowboy sequence where draw, that kind of thing. And it stems from old cartoons and just that type of 1980s, late 70s comedy, and yeah, he was on board, and it was cool. Then I didn't know that. I didn't anticipate that it would take us the exact same time to get our sleeves on and do all our stuff.
It worked out like seamlessly. It was actually pretty immaculate, to your point. I mean, you guys literally did it at the exact same time. Posed everything, I also think it's really funny too, because storytelling is so important in the WWE, and I just think that was peak storytelling. Everything that went into the Cobra and Sacco. I mean, the Cobra is one of the most effective finishers, like statistically, like it literally is in the history of the promotion. It is. I think only two people have ever kicked out of it. So
yeah, I've probably given a couple thousand. So
oh my gosh, man, yeah. Well, it's funny too, because I've also heard Mick Foley in interviews sort of talk about like residuals he'd seen from like the Sacco puppet, like just like and small numbers and stuff. But I'm not sure. I think I maybe heard you say something about like, yeah, there was a number and then it ended up being a smaller number or whatever. But even, just seeing, a little bit of stuff for that. Was it cool being able to finally get the sleeve as opposed to just using your hand and kind of, using it?
Yeah, in the beginning, there wasn't, I didn't think of the sleeve. I was happy doing it for, I think we did like a year or two just with the hand, and then we just thought of making something for merchandise. But no, it was just my number that I had in my head percentage wise was just not accurate. I was I was getting ahead of myself. Um, but yeah, it's free money, man. If
Yeah.
they're selling out 400 a night, and it was cool. I think it was cool that kids were doing it, you know. And years later, when I go to conventions or signings, yeah, I hear, you know, it was pretty pop culture, you know, like a lot of kids at schools were doing it, and I've
Yeah.
seen it on sporting programs. People, you know, usually tag me. Someone hits a home run, does the cobra when he rounds home
Yeah.
plate. Soccer games, basketball games, football games, as a part of touchdown celebrations. I've seen the cobra like tons of times. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And the trombone, where did that come from?
Oh, I stole that. That's the only move I've ever stolen.
Okay.
I actually saw her ODB. ODB used to do a trombone at OVW, and
Wow.
but I modified it. You ever see the beginning of there's a college basketball game when the guy's like running down in the field and he's leaning.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It was kind of like that as well. Combine those two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too because I want to just retrograde back a little bit just to the idea of being a funny man, like being the comedian Santino Marella, but obviously having the chops to compete at a serious level and beyond that in the WWE. I think one of the most appealing things to a lot of people, fans, young and old, about the WWE is that a lot of the storylines within the WWE actually reflect real life in a lot of different ways, and the lessons learned in our own lives translate directly on screen. With some of these stories, that the wrestlers are sort of conveying. So I am curious, like you yourself, have you ever personally felt like an underdog? And then also just with your character too. It's just so funny. I remember in 2011 when you were in the Royal Rumble with Alberto Del Rio. That was like, it's like I felt like, just having watched you, as long as I had at that point, like I wanted to like tear up because I genuinely thought that you were gonna pull off, the impossible and, basically have your shot at, a title at WrestleMania. So, but just the idea of, having that sort of shape you as an underdog, shaping people's perceptions of you so that, yeah, while their expectations are low, they still understand, you are a Swiss Army knife. And if you do want to be able to, perform at a very high level, you can.
Yeah, I always thought there was something, you know, romantic with in ending my career with leaving the people wanting a little more, you know.
Absolutely.
Uh, but no, with regards to relating to life, I've never been an underdog in life. I was, I've been very blessed, man. You know, I was the kid
Mhm.
at 10 years old that hit the game-winning grand slam, and
Wow.
when I was already provincial judo champion by the time I was finishing elementary school. And I was on the national team, and I was the national champion for Canada, men under 21, and I competed in the international high school championships. So I've been winning shit my whole life, like, you know,
Yep.
regional wrestling championships, Eastern national wrestling championships, and I just got lucky. You know, I took a real good sport. I did the sport of judo since I was
Sure.
9 years old, and I did it right through, you know, obviously right through university. So it was an excellent uh, prerequisite for professional wrestling because I
Oh
started
yeah.
professional wrestling pretty late in life. And I started my training at 28 years old. I had a
Well,
match. I had a match at like 25, but I was untrained. You know, it was a battle royal. But my actual training started when I was about 28. My first match, 29. I left to Japan at 30, moved to OVW at 31, got signed at 32, debuted at 33. And I mean, we made pretty quick work of it, but
Absolutely.
that's a lot of that is because of judo. You know, I was like the grappling, the falling. It was second nature. I've been doing it my whole life. Um, and it turned out, you know, I got lucky. It turned out that that was one of the more effective combat sports, like jiu-jitsu and wrestling and all that stuff.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I got I got lucky
yeah. Yeah.
with getting to grow up doing judo.
Yeah. I think also, just because I want to touch on it, you mentioned like, when you were starting out, like that first night in Milan, when you were called in and, you sort of get started, it wasn't supposed to be this 3 month thing, like, and it turned into a 3 month thing. And it wasn't supposed to be this whole career, and then it turned into a 10-plus year career. So just what was that like? Just being obviously just not like Joe Schmo, but like obviously you weren't in the WWE, and then now you sort of however many months removed, you are a superstar. What was that like? And then also if you can just sort of talk to especially in those first few years when you were wrestling, if you have any stories maybe of just like either you're welcome to the WWE moment, if you want to call it that, or just something where you sort of realize like, wow, like I'm here and I'm doing what I set out to do when I first got started with this.
Yeah. So, well, a couple of things. I got very lucky again, and I had Rip Rogers as a coach. So when I was in Japan and I screwed up something, I overstayed a tourist visa, so I had to leave Japan. So I'm like, just getting my career going and wrestling. I had a few matches there, and I was starting to get some traction in Japan. I had to leave, so I had to reformulate the game plan. I came home and I was bouncing in clubs, trying to figure out the next step. And then I heard about this place, OVW, that was a school, and it was also the developmental territory. So I knew if I can get there and work my way up the beginners class, intermediate class, advanced class, I would be with that developmental talent, right? And that's exactly what happened. But while doing that, I got to the beginners class and I was there for like 3 weeks. They realized I was an athlete, so I went to the intermediate class, but I didn't know much about psychology or like that WWE style. So I learned how to lock up the proper way at probably 31 years old, which is
Wow.
crazy. And but
Late
I
bloomer. Yeah.
met Rip Rogers, and he was the man that he gave me all the tools I need to succeed. And I never strayed, even after being there for 10 years, from the teachings and the philosophies and psychology from Rip. And even so, with my 6 indie matches and several matches in Japan, and I had several matches at OVW, several on TV. So man, I'm and then I had matches in class. And anyway, I was pretty confident I was less than 50 matches in when this opportunity came up. And Raw happened to be going to Italy, and they looked through the name of developmental talent and they see Anthony Carelli, that looks Italian. They called me up, and I worked downtown Toronto one time for 1 year, basically from bell to bell, like April to April. So it was like one complete year. And I drove in rush hour traffic every day for a year. And I listened to this Italian tape because I wanted to improve my Italian. I wanted to communicate with my grandma better.
Sure.
And it's funny because, after a year, I worked somewhere closer, and the job really had I did learn a lot. I had a lot of responsibility. I was doing events and everything. But the value, when you look back, of having that job was that drive. That drive every morning where I listened to that tape. And that tape ended up paying dividends years later when I was asked to say something Italian. Because it was like a tourist Italian tape, how to order a hotel room meals,
Yeah.
And I just I repeated something that I would listen to on the daily basis in that car. And
Wow.
man, serendipity is a big word,
Yeah.
And like meeting Rip, also because I started a little bit late, and Rip was able to fast track my learning. He takes pride in becoming very efficient at the information exchange that you're getting. There's a lot to download, a lot of information, and he's very good at helping you download at a quick pace.
Sure.
So I remember backstage in Italy when I'm about to debut, and just repeating to myself, you are prepared. You are prepared for this. You are prepared. You are over prepared. And I had faith in my preparedness because I had faith in Rip Rogers. And I was able to get out there and, fake it till you make it. And then it took a couple of years to kind of get those reps in and get a few hundred matches in there. But I was learning on the fly with the guys like Chavo Guerrero and William Regal, and a lot of live events, working with those guys. really learning on the job,
Yeah.
But yeah, did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think I think the last thing too, I'm like quickly, if you had to ballpark, how many matches would you say you've competed in over the course of maybe specifically to WWE just alone, if you had to say?
Oh, WWE probably over probably about 2000 ish.
Wow, and that includes live events. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of live events, and then we were doing both TVs for years. So I was doing about, there were some years where we were hitting 300, nights a year. So 300 times seven is 2100. But we had an extra year in there, and at least 250 a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on again. And I admire your on mic, your in the ring, on the mic skills, just because you're such a good improvisationalist as well. So yeah, it's just really been a pleasure speaking with you. And yeah, Santino, thank you very much for coming on the inaugural episode of Broad Shoulders.
My pleasure. Thank you. I like the name as well.
Thank you.
Sometimes I think of starting up a podcast, and I think, what would I call it? But Broad Shoulders
Yeah.
is a
Oh, thanks, man. Congrats on everything, all of your success. You're still, kicking ass in WWE, TNA. So I really appreciate the time.
My pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Santino Marella, an absolute class act. Yeah, thank you. Big thank you to Santino from us. Really, really cool story. Not just him, but his entire trajectory to, the WWE, being from somebody in Canada, his daughter as well, a WWE superstar in her own right. If you are tuning in and have made it to the end of the episode, I just want to say thank you very, very much. So glad to be able to have Santino on. Even more happy to be able to speak to more folks about other awesome stuff in the coming months. So very happy to be able to have this happen. Again, thank you guys for listening. And until next time, this has been Broad Shoulders.
Broad shoulders.